maybe if we think that this sandwich spot is like making the best sandwiches, yeah, we're gonna rank it in between two spots with a Michelin star. I think that some people are going to have strong feelings about that. But I think many more of us have had transcendent experiences of biting into a taco and thinking my life will be forever changed by this taco.
This is Taste. I'm your host, Matt Rodbard. MacKenzie Chung Fegan is a restaurant critic of the San Francisco Chronicle and has just released the paper's top 100 restaurants list. It's the first time in 6 years the publication has done a big list, and in this episode, she goes over how she came up with the list and why the Bay Area restaurant scene is absolutely on fire. We go over many of the picks, including the top 10. Also on the episode, Eliza and I talk about my recent trip to San Francisco and some of my own exciting restaurant discoveries. Some of the places were on the Chronicle's list, while others may have slid under the radar. I visited bakeries, coffee spots, and had a number of memorable meals. I hope you enjoy this episode. MacKenzie Chung Fegan, welcome back to This Is Taste. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me. I am tired. I'm going to say that I'm tired.
Well, you deserve a rest. I mean, you are the restaurant critic at the San Francisco Chronicle, and you just released a monumental piece of journalism, the top 100 restaurants of the Bay Area. So after 6 years off, you decided to bring it back. MacKenzie, what caused you to make this decision? And of course, I got to ask, what was the reporting like?
Yeah. Well, the decision was made for me, if I'm being honest. So I started at the Chronicle last January, a little bit over a year ago. And when I started, my editor, Janelle Bicker, was like, guess what? You're bringing the top 100 back. And my colleague, our associate restaurant critic, Cesar Hernandez, had started percolating. This idea had started percolating in Cesar's mind that we should bring back the top 100, which had not been done in its complete form since before the pandemic. And as he was dining around, he would see stickers or signs at places that was we're a top 100 Chronicle restaurant. And he just started realizing that it held a lot of meaning, not for everyone, but for some businesses, it was really important to them. And so he pitched it to Janelle before I started. She was like, this is a great idea. And by the time I came on board, it was full steam ahead. So I started doing research basically from day one.
Yeah, well, shout out to Cesar Hernandez. I'd love to have him on the show and really hear about the East Bay, because I know you break up the San Francisco Peninsula and the East Bay between your work. But I really want to talk about the reporting, because of course I love this mention of those stickers that sit on windows and sometimes look like they're old, and after 6 years they've been I'm sure beaten up by the winds of San Francisco, and you have fresh ones you're about to send out. So let's talk about putting together the actual list. Cesar Hernandez and yourself are of course doing your job, which is reporting and writing reviews and doing some feature reporting. But then you have to come to this period where you're like, all right, we got to make this list. But it's not just 100, it's listed from 100 to 1. So once you have all of that reporting done, what's the process of getting it into order, getting it who's in, who's out? I mean, I cannot imagine the work that goes into that.
Yeah, so we started with a long list and literally just a ton of names of restaurants in a spreadsheet. And this was both restaurants that had been recognized by other media outlets. For example, anything that the Michelin Guide, had recommended was on our initial scouting list. Places that Cesar had reviewed, places that Soleil, my predecessor, had reviewed. It was just a big tent of every restaurant that we thought that we might want to consider. And some of these places Cesar had eaten at, some he hadn't. Some of the places I had eaten at before I started as a critic, and some I hadn't. Most I hadn't. So that was our working list. And we kept adding to it as well as we discovered new places, as new places opened. So, we literally just had a spreadsheet that said top 100 working list. And at a certain point, we decided, okay, research needs to draw to a close. We locked ourselves in a conference room with several stacks of Post-it notes.
Oh, cool.
And Cesar and I both came with our picks, and we wrote one restaurant per Post-it note, threw them all up on the wall, and there were a lot of duplicates, as you might imagine. And when we were done on that very first day, we were actually quite surprised that we had a somewhat tight list, still a long list, but a shorter long list of about 140 names. And then we just kept on winnowing until finally we had a cohort of about 105 because we did need some alternates, sadly, because we were afraid that places would close. And a couple did, actually. And then from there, we began the ranking process, which was its own beast.
Yeah, two things. I mean, you have this 140, then you have this 105, and making those final cuts has got to be difficult. And I mean, when you put those post-its up and you have 140, how are you deciding about the 40 that get cut? I mean, that's like a gut check. It's like a gut moment for you two journalists, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's incredibly tough. Like, one thing that we wanted to prioritize with this list was diversity. And by that, we mean diversity of cuisine, diversity of price point, diversity of geography, right? Like, there is no objective list of the top 100 restaurants in the Bay Area. It does not exist. So you have to plant a flag on your approach. And ours was that we wanted this list to be useful to people. And that meant that it wouldn't just be, 100 of like the fanciest, most expensive restaurants, or 100, or, like 89 of the best restaurants in San Francisco, and then a few token restaurants elsewhere. So we did want to make sure that, any one type of cuisine wasn't overrepresented. And as anyone who lives in the Bay Area knows, there are a few cuisine brackets that are really heavy hitters: Mexican food, Cal Italian food, fine dining. And so when we looked at the 140 shorter long list, we did sort of start making groupings and categories and thinking about like, okay, if all of this group of restaurants in Oakland, for example, makes it on the list, will that feel too skewed towards Oakland specifically? And that was how we started making some of those really difficult decisions.
Yeah, I mean, you look at like Marin, for example, and you write in the capsule review, it's not just good for Marin; it's good for the Bay.
Yeah,
but it sounds like you didn't put a lot of Marin restaurants on the list, though.
There are 2 restaurants in Marin County, and, it's been an interesting response so far. I've heard from people in Marin who have said, you hit the nail on the head. Our dining scene in Marin is not as developed as it is in Oakland and San Francisco. And then I've heard from a lot of people in Marin who are mad. And I understand why. They feel like their local favorites have been overlooked. And, what I say in my blurb about Madcap, which is the highest ranking Marin restaurant, is that, we do scout in Marin. And I think some people think that we just don't spend enough time there, but we are really out there actively trying restaurants in Marin. And when you compare the best that Marin has to offer with the best that maybe San Francisco or Oakland has to offer, when we're making those hard calls, a lot of times the Marin restaurants are not quite rising to the same level, which is not to say that there aren't good restaurants in Marin. There absolutely are. But when you are creating a list like this, you have to make some hard calls. So yeah, there's only 2 restaurants in Marin. But yeah, if anyone out there listening lives in Marin or spends a lot of time in Marin and feels like there are restaurants that I may not have visited or are flying under the radar, please let me know.
I mean, that's the whole point of making these lists and making this public proclamation that maybe there aren't as many good restaurants in Marin. It's like, tell us where to go. Like, tell us where to go and we'll go there. Like, you work tirelessly. I mean, it's incredible. You and Caesar have incredible stamina, and it's a great it's a great testament to it that you have 100 restaurants that you can talk about. It's amazing, and it's just part of the journalism process. One more question before we start talking about the actual restaurants on the list. You set some guardrails about what qualifies as a restaurant, and I think it's an interesting way to look at it because, like a food truck is different than a fine dining restaurant, and you have a few bullet points that you kind of like requirements for making this list.
That's right. Yes. One guideline that we set was that we wanted a place to sit. So even if they were takeout spots or primarily takeout spots or food trucks, we wanted people to be able to sit down there on the spot and enjoy the meal. Because once you start flinging open the doors to go only spots, it just becomes a different beast. Like, what is a restaurant, right? And there would be many ways to categorize it. Some people wouldn't have included food trucks. We did include 2 food trucks on the list. We also didn't include home restaurants. And my colleague Caesar has done a lot of research into home restaurants in the East Bay in particular. Um, but, there can be some issues about we don't want to like wade into like, are they permitted? Is this going to create a problem for them? So we decided to exclude home restaurants, even though we do think that some of the most exciting cooking in the Bay Area is coming out of these more informal restaurants.
Yeah, and like a lot of those home restaurants end up being public restaurants at some point too. Which, and you're
Yes.
covering this beat, you certainly have your eyes on their evolutions from home restaurants. So let's go to the list, and I went in chronological order, and I just selected restaurants that I thought had interesting stories. I haven't been to most of these restaurants. I've been to a few of them, but I just thought they were interesting. And also, check out the link in the show notes. Go to the feature. It's really cool. You did a nice job with the design of it. There's like a way that you can tick off if you've been there and save restaurants. And if you want to go old school, get out that pad of paper, get out that pen. And let's, this is your San Francisco list here. Many of us travel there for who don't live in San Francisco. Let's start at 92, Hilda and Jesse's. I love this restaurant, the spirit. You called it was truly a quote-unquote gay restaurant, and it serves a silky smooth chicken mousseline snuggled inside leaves of cabbage. I love everything about this restaurant. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, it's such a wonderful, quirky restaurant. It has a Michelin star, and I think it is not your traditional Michelin-starred restaurant. It started out as a brunch restaurant, and they since have also expanded to dinner. It is a tasting menu format for dinner. They call it like an adventure menu, and it changes all the time. And it's queer-owned and operated. And most of the blurbs that we wrote, we did not write in the first person. A few of them we did. And this is one that I wrote in the first person because as a queer person, it really spoke to me specifically. It reminded me of going over to a friend's queer co-op and what was being served for dinner, except if the person who was cooking that night was an extremely talented trained chef.
Wow.
There's sprouted lentils on the menu. There's nutritional yeast and everything. There's tofu. There's really humble ingredients that I think of as like very kind of earthy, gay food, but presented in such incredible, innovative, delicious formats. And this dish that I wrote about in particular, was like a cabbage roll filled with this silky chicken farce. And it was so exquisite. And you could just see the technique. And, cabbage, the humblest of vegetables, arguably, had just been transformed into this really dynamite bite.
Amazing. Well, at number 87, I think we're probably going to the fully opposite side of the spectrum of San Francisco restaurants. Is the House of Prime Rib. You and I actually dined there together a couple years back, and I love this choice. And it's a place to visit, and it's not just for the beef.
Yeah, I'm so happy you wanted to talk about this because obviously it's an experience that you and I shared. And to clue listeners in, we actually tried to go to another restaurant first, but in true in true San Francisco fashion, it was on the later side. This restaurant was supposed to be open until 9. We arrived at 8:45, and they're like, "Yeah, we're closed." Which is so typical of San Francisco. It's an early town. And so now, like you're visiting, like I want to take you somewhere good. Like, where do we go? We happen to be near House of Prime Rib, notoriously difficult to get a reservation. But I said, you know what? Like, let's just walk in and see what happens. And we got a seat at the bar pretty quickly, right?
Yeah, it was like 15 minutes. And we, totally just asking the maitre d', who was great, to get us a table. There was no flexing food writer credentials there. And yeah, we sat at the bar, met a really interesting bartender. I thought so.
Yes. Yeah. And I loved experiencing House of Prime Rib with you because it wasn't something that was on your radar, even though, it's one of the most beloved restaurants by people in the Bay Area. But I got to watch you experience it for the first time with your background as well, coming from the Midwest.
Yeah, I have had prime rib in like Detroit and places like that. But like the San Francisco style, I mean, there's great pageantry. There are definitely carts in the room. And this is like one of those places that are on the tourist maps that you go to. And rightly so. Did I love every dish? No, I did not. But that's not why it's not in the top 50 for a reason. But it definitely has a lot of spirit, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's absolutely, as they say, a vibe. And it is where people go to celebrate because no matter who you are, they treat you well. I believe if you finish your prime rib, you can get a second cut of prime rib on the house, but you have to finish it there.
That's wild. We
Yeah.
didn't take that test, thankfully.
We did not.
I'm Nomi Fry.
I'm Vincent Cunningham.
I'm Alex Schwartz, and we are Critics at Large, a podcast from The New Yorker. Guys, what do we do on the show every week?
We look into the startling maw of our culture and try to figure something out.
That's right. We take something that's going on in the culture now. Maybe it's a movie, maybe it's a book, maybe it's just kind of a trend.
And we expand it across culture as kind of a pattern or a template.
Join us on Critics at Large from The New Yorker. New episodes drop every Thursday. Follow wherever you get your podcasts.
Well, I should have said at the jump, but this list, it encompasses all throughout the Bay, the great restaurants, and it goes all the way up to Napa. And you have at number 80, Mustard's Grill. I've been here as well, and we published the Mustard's cookbook at 10 speed, I think like 20 years ago.
Oh, that's so cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and it's a really cool book. It has extreme early 2000s vibes, which I love, and it's still in print. But I liked seeing this selection, and I guess tell us a little bit about Mustards and in general how you and Caesar viewed, Napa and places that are quite a distance from San Francisco, but certainly important in your coverage.
Yes, definitely. I mean, not only do many of our subscribers live in wine country, but of course, our subscribers who don't often like to go up to wine country for a weekend. They want to know where to eat. And Mustard's is one of those classic restaurants that is still persevering, decades after it's being founded, and is doing such excellent work. And I will say that I have not eaten at every restaurant on the top 100 list, and neither has Caesar. This was a really collaborative list, and it meant that we were able to sort of like split up and conquer more of the Bay Area. So this was one of Caesar's picks. I have not been to Mustard's, and I'm dying to go. So really looking forward to booking a trip up there.
I mean, MacKenzie, the menu alone, I mean, of course, it's got this like splashy wine menu, but it's such a fun menu. It's really, to me, it's food that goes perfectly with wine in that sense of it's sturdy. You have like definitely comfort classics, but you can get an incredible salad as well with like local cheeses and European cheeses. My memory of that place is really strong.
I also love the photo that we ran with this one of the giant pile of onion rings. And you can just see the person, the lucky recipient of the onion rings in the background. His face is cut off, but like he's like surprised and delighted at how big this stack is. And I want to be that guy.
I mean, how could I have forgotten the onion rings? I was that guy. I ordered the onion rings, massive plate. It's kind of in the blooming onion style, and I just loved it so much. These were great onion rings, and again, it's Mustard's Grill. Let's go to 61 Kin Cow, and I wanted to bring this one up. Beloved restaurant by many, especially in like the national food media, and really, I visited about 2 years ago. Had a good meal. And 61 is on the list, but does this feel slightly like a demotion? Were you thinking about restaurants that maybe had a lot of acclaim? And I spotted a couple others just from my instincts that you kind of dropped in the list a bit because of maybe some experiences or other things?
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I'll say that we have Nari, Chef Pim's other restaurant,
I saw that,
ranking higher at number 48. And to me, both of those restaurants are so excellent. But when I think about how to compare them and how to rank them, to me, Nari is the evolution. Kin Cow was her first restaurant. A lot of sort of like, the menu doesn't change, and they are dishes that were flying under the radar at the time, weren't just your traditional pad thai that you were seeing at Thai restaurants. But Nari is really, I think, where she gets to flex and inject some of that like California cuisine. For me, that's why Nari, along with the environment, it's like sexier. It's like more of a date night spot. That's why Nari to me ranks higher than Kin Cow. But I think the question you bring up is really interesting because I am certain that some chefs are displeased with their ranking on this list or feel like they should have ranked higher. And that was a risk that we took with ranking the list at all. Formerly the list was not ranked, but we decided to go ahead and try to order them, which I don't know. I guess we're just like gluttons for punishment. But yes, I'm sure that there are lauded chefs whose restaurants have stars that are like, oh, I'm in the 80s. Like, that sucks.
It's an incredibly strong point of view to do a list like this and to take that risk. And you called it that. And I think I agree. It's not the safest way to do this list, but it's the one that has the point of view. And your title is critic. So you're offering some feedback on the San Francisco restaurant scene. I wanted to zoom out before we get to the top 50 and just like say, man, I've really warmed to San Francisco's food scene. I've been able to go, I think, 3 times in the past 3 years. And I think before that, I was like, I'm still Mr. LA. I love LA tremendously and Southern California food. I don't know what it was. My good friend Dookie operates a bakery in San Francisco. So I have friends through him and I really appreciate what he's doing. Something about the scene wasn't exciting me. And it was kind of my real mistake. And I want to ask you, MacKenzie, what's really exciting in the Bay Area for you right now, covering it every single day, and just what maybe what do us like outsiders maybe don't see about your city?
I think that it is quite simply a food obsessed city. San Francisco is a small town in many ways. We're 7 miles by 7 miles. It's a small town. The population of San Francisco is about 800,000. And granted, San Jose is like over 1 million. When you zoom out and take the larger Bay Area together, it is a huge region. But I think the way this city and this region takes its food is really seriously. We've always punched above our weight. You ask anyone on the street, like, where should I go for lunch? They're going to have opinions for you. And so I think that level of commitment to eating well really pushes our restaurateurs and chefs. All that is to say that it is not an easy region to run a business and to run a restaurant. And so the people who are here, who are committed to excellence are really, I don't know, I have so much respect for people who run restaurants in San Francisco, including my own family. You have to really have a love and a passion to do it, because otherwise you wouldn't. You would find any other job.
Yeah. Well said, MacKenzie. I think you really nailed it with the difficulty to operate restaurants. Generally speaking, in America, it's very difficult to operate a restaurant. But in San Francisco, there's just so many factors at play: rising rents, changing labor laws. There's so many facets that make it so difficult to make that money and make it work. And you probably see a lot of closure. But I love that sentiment. Let's continue with the list. Number 43, SCOMA's. And I really, this drew me in because you write that it should be a tourist trap, but it most certainly is not. It's in the top 50.
Yeah, I'll say that before I started this job, I personally had not been to SCOMA's, and I was skeptical. It's literally on Fisherman's Wharf, which is sort of a touristy section of San Francisco, for those not familiar. And the food is notoriously bad. I remember going to Fisherman's Wharf on like a school field trip, and, it's just kind of like a carnival atmosphere. You can probably get Dippin' Dots. I didn't think that there would be a serious restaurant operating at Fisherman's Wharf, and I was so wrong. SCOMA's is the type of place that you take family when they're in from out of town because, like, you really want to go. And they serve the freshest seafood every day. The server will come and tell you what has been fresh off the boats that morning. They're on a pier so that the fishermen can pull right up and offload their catch of the day. And this is a place that is not resting on its laurels. It's still family owned and operated. It's been in business since the 70s, and the commitment to excellence is still very apparent.
Yeah, I love that you give a rec for those who want to go to the tourist destinations because, people visit San Francisco for that exact reason. Many people listening to the show, and it's great to have this rec at SCOMA's. Let's go to 26, Cafe Jacqueline. I like that you call out the restaurant for being known for their soufflés. I mean, that is a great note there because I love a souffle.
Yeah, have you ever been to a souffle restaurant before?
No, I don't. I mean, not in America. And tell me about it. It sounds really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I don't only call out the restaurant for its souffles. Like, that's what you're going to order. Like, I guess there are other things on the menu. Like, I've had French onion soup there, but you are going for the souffles, and you're going to have one for dinner and you're going to have one for dessert. And that's all there is to it. Jacqueline of Cafe Jacqueline is in her 80s, late 80s. And she's been operating this tiny little jewel box of a restaurant, I believe, since the 1980s. And her GM, her server, who will talk you through all the souffles, has been with her for many of those years. It's an old school restaurant in every sense. You have to call to make a reservation. Wow. It is extremely hard to get through, but keep at it. And the souffles are expensive. I don't know if you've seen the price of eggs recently, but it's alarming. And she used to beat them all by hand. But then last year she broke her elbow and had to take some time off. And everyone was very concerned for her well-being and also for the fate of her restaurant. And now when you go, you can hear the whirring of a stand mixer in the background, but they're still as excellent and ethereal and as airy as ever. It is a singular restaurant in San Francisco.
And what neighborhood is that in?
It's in North Beach.
North Beach. All right. That's Cafe Jacqueline. And I'm glad. I hope the elbow is doing better. I hope.
I think so. I mean, when I saw her, I asked her how her health was, and she seemed, she flexed a little bit for me. So she seems to be doing well. We wish her many more years.
At number 22, you have Sandy's, which is a sandwich shop. And I stopped on it. I'm like, a sandwich shop in the top 25. And I know you've had some sandwiches, and I know that those are very debatable foods in our world. This must be a really good sandwich.
It is a really good sandwich. The menu is so tight. Sandy's specializes in muffalettas. And there's a traditional muffaletta. There's also a vegan muffaletta made with mushrooms that is arguably even better. There's also in season like a tomato sandwich with Duke's mayo. There's a pimento cheese sandwich. There's a great chocolate chip cookie. That's kind of it. But like, if it's on the menu, it is there for a reason, and it is excellent. And yeah, I mean, not only do we have a sandwich shop in the top 25, we have a bakery in the top 10. And, one way that we tried to think about this was we want to recognize restaurants that are doing the best version of whatever it is that they set out to do. And that means that, maybe if we think that this sandwich spot is like making the best sandwiches, we're going to rank it in between two spots with a Michelin star. And, I think that some people are going to have strong feelings about that. But I think many more of us have had transcendent experiences of biting into a taco and thinking my life will be forever changed by this taco. And we just want to give those humbler foods, more casual foods, their due.
Yeah, and like also at the price point too. Like this isn't a restaurant list that's defined by fine dining. You certainly have fine dining in your top 10, but it's not. You're not rejecting it, but it's not centered around fine dining. And I think from the outside looking in, at least San Francisco proper has felt like a fine dining town. So I love this recommendation.
Correct. And, when we were thinking about utility, how is this list going to be used? Caesar and I spend much of our time actually compiling lists of top fine dining, for example, or top affordable restaurants, top Italian restaurants. So those lists are out there. You can find them on sfchronicle.com. And we didn't just want the top 100 to, copy paste the top fine dining list. We wanted this to be a resource for people as they're thinking about where to eat for all of the different occasions throughout their lives.
Well, before we get to the top 10, I just want to ask you something that I think about a lot in just the coverage of chefs and restaurants on our show, as a James Beard voter, and just in general in thinking about restaurants is how do you negotiate a restaurant's, I would say, like, background noise, and that's just a broad term. What happens in the restaurant that isn't on the plate, meaning their relationship with their workers, the chef and owner, who that person is and what they embody as a person. How do you square this when you're acknowledging these 100 restaurants, the best 100 restaurants in the Bay, I would say that is a bit of a burden. It's also a challenge. So, I mean, you and Caesar, when you're talking about these 100, how do you look at that?
Yeah, it's such a good question and such a tricky question. And, this does not only apply to the restaurant industry. I think we've been having the debate about, can you like art made by a terrible person for generations? And we'll have this conversation for forevermore. And of course, I think that it came to a head first in the Me Too era and in the Black Lives Matter era. How are you weighing the things that you hear about restaurant owners and chefs and bad behaviors? And interestingly, in 2018, right when the Me Too movement was really gaining steam, it coincided with the release of a top 100 that included, I believe, 3 restaurants that were either owned or operated by chefs who had been accused of sexual misconduct, very credibly. One of them was Tosca Cafe, which Ken Friedman was an owner in. And so the Chronicle Food and Wine section had a little bit of a roundtable where they invited 4 people on staff to weigh in on whether these restaurants and other restaurants where chefs or owners had been accused of misconduct deserved the platform. And 3 of the people said no, that, there's plenty other places to, I'll just say 3 of the people said no. And Michael Bauer, the restaurant critic at the time, was the lone dissenter. And he basically was like, I am going to evaluate a restaurant based on what is on the plate in front of me. And, it was more nuanced than that. He put some thought behind it. But he was like, yeah, these 3 restaurants are on the list and I had good meals there. And also I know about the controversies and readers can decide for themselves. I don't think that is not the approach that I want to take. However, I do deeply sympathize with where he's coming from, which is, what is the role of the critic, of this person who does wield an uncomfortable amount of power in being judge and jury? And it's something that Caesar and I think about very deeply. And while we were creating this list of 100, House of Prime Rib, which we just mentioned, both having a great experience at, a lawsuit was filed against it by a former employee alleging wage discrimination, and House of Prime Rib denies it. And, we were like, how do we take this into consideration? Does House of Prime Rib stay on the list? We decided it did. And I think other critics would have made a different decision. But, I think that it's worth discussing the fact that we are not certain. We don't do background checks on all of our restaurants. And, you mentioned the James Beard Awards. I know that they sort of tried to course correct by having this kind of informal tip line.
Anonymous tip line, yeah.
Exactly. An anonymous tip line, which I think, the impetus for that came from a really good place. And then it ended up being really messy. It's like, okay, are you doing background checks on the people who are giving the tips? How does this governing body of the James Beard Foundation make sure, that the tips are vetted? And it ended up being a quite sticky situation, right? So it's tough because there is no good answer for how you ensure that only quote unquote good people, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
Are being recognized. And yeah, I'm figuring it out along with everybody else in my position.
Well, I think you really laid it out well, and you and Caesar have done a fine job in negotiating this tricky topic. There's a difference between, pending litigation for wage theft and then credible reporting and accounts of sexual misconduct. I mean, there's levels here, and litigation happens in all businesses. Everyone knows that, and some of it's valid and some of it's not. So to penalize a restaurant because of pending litigation seems unfair, and I think you made the right choice there. I appreciate you really thinking about it. I don't think restaurants are food on the plate, so I disagree with that assessment. I think there's so much more that goes on, and of course, you're going to make mistakes along the way, and meaning you're not going to know everything. Maybe it's not even a mistake; it's just you just aren't going to know, and things will come to light, and you'll have another list another year. Are you going to do this every year? You think?
I think we are definitely going to do this every year.
Yeah, so there you go. There'll be a new list and fresh top 10s. And let's actually get to the top 10 because I feel like We have a lot to talk about, and I'm going to list the top 10, and I'm just going to list them, and I just want to go into a couple of them. I don't want to think we need to go over every single one because we just don't have time, but you should definitely, once again, the link is in the show notes. Make sure to click on it and check it out and save some of these restaurants to your list. If you live in the Bay Area or if you're visiting there, it's a terrific resource. All right, so the top 10 from the San Francisco Chronicle. Number 10 is Zuni Cafe. Number 9 is Single Thread. Number 8 is Bread Belly. Number 7 is Copra. Number 6 is The Progress. Number 5 is Popoka. Number 4 is Sun Moon Studio. Number 3 is Rich Table. Number 2 is Four Kings. And the number 1 restaurant on your list is Burdell. I had not heard of it. I cannot wait to visit. I think, MacKenzie, let's start with Zuni. Such an iconic restaurant. It's number 10. It seems well placed. I, of course, don't cover the scene. Why is that at number 10?
Zuni is the oldest restaurant in the top 10. Zuni Cafe has been open since 1979. It is as much a part of the soul of San Francisco as I write in the blurb as Emperor Norton or, the wild parrots. Like, it is just baked into the heart and soul of San Francisco. And the food still slaps. Yeah. I think what's really special about it is that it has entered this sort of new era of leadership. Chef Ann is in the kitchen leading an incredible team of people. Everybody goes to Zuni for the roast chicken. That's sort of like its most famous dish. I will say, I think that you shouldn't order the roast chicken, not because it's not good, but because it's a roast chicken for 2. And it means that you aren't able to try some of the more seasonal specials. And that is where Zuni really shines in this, California cuisine, what's at the farmer's market today. They're really carrying on the legacy of Chef Judy Rogers, who passed away a couple decades ago now. And it's just an incredibly special, beautiful spot that I adore, and most San Franciscans do as well.
Well said. Zuni at number 10. We'll jump to number 8, and it's Bread Belly, and it's the bakery you referenced. And later in this episode, I go over some of my personal highlights from San Francisco, and I got to visit Bread Belly, and I have a lot of thoughts about it. But number 8, you put a bakery in the top 10, but this isn't just any bakery. I looked at the gram. Oh my God, the sandwiches. I just am like, holy shit, those sandwiches. But tell me why it's in the top 10.
Yeah, Bread Belly is probably most famous for its baked goods, and it was sort of in this first wave of Asian American inflected bakeries. So you may have been influenced by Bread Belly without even knowing it, because it has had, it's been so influential in San Francisco and I think across the country as well. Their fluorescent green kaya toast that's flavored with pandan, all of these sort of fusion, if I may use that word, baked goods like the mafocaccia, delicious. But then they are a legitimate restaurant as well, where they serve soups, they serve sandwiches, and it changes all the time, and they are always, always delicious. So this is probably the most casual restaurant in the top 10. It is a bakery, but we did feel like if we were going to put a bakery on the list, it needed to be able to serve a full meal and not just pastries.
Let's skip to number 6, The Progress. This is from the team behind Staper, Provision, Stuart and Nicole. And I'd like to get a sense about The Progress. I think outsiders might know Staper, Provision, which is also in your top 100. But The Progress, for those who don't know, is doing its something very special. And let us know about it.
Yeah, so The Progress opened in 2014. Yeah. And the concept is kind of like a dinner party format, which now I feel like it's just kind of how we eat. And maybe it was how I ate back then too. But at the time was quite novel. And the menu is this Venn diagram where it's shareable plates on this side, vegetables here. It's very seasonally driven, very California cuisine again. And it is just a joyous place to eat. You can sit at the bar. They've got an off-menu hot dog. The cocktails are terrific. Or you can bring, a larger group. They've got, a little private dining room in the balcony, and just have a huge family meal style feast. And it is a delight. It is a delight. And I really also wanted to celebrate restaurants like The Progress or our number 3 restaurant, Rich Table, that are entering into their second decade, which is really tough, like entering your teenage years as a restaurant is such an accomplishment. And to be performing at this level of excellence, I thought really deserved recognition.
It is true. And like you celebrate that 10-year anniversary, and some of the restaurants just call it quits after that. They're like, all right,
Yeah.
we had that cool party. Let's maybe wrap it up here. But yeah, you should celebrate restaurants that are in their teens. Let's actually do the top 4. So number 4 is Sun Moon Studio. And I had not heard of this restaurant. I looked at the blurb. I was like, this is really, really interesting. It's in a unique location. And tell us about it.
Yeah, they're a new restaurant. They've been open for less than a year. The chefs are partners in life as well as partners in business. And it is just the two of them in the kitchen, which is remarkable, period, but is even more remarkable when you see the type of food that they are turning out. This is a fine dining tasting menu restaurant. And Sarah, Chef Sarah, is the baker of the duo. And the collaboration between them is really amazing. And their individual stamp on each dish and the way that they work together, I think, is so special. So there's like an egg custard tart, like a MacKenzie egg custard tart. And Sarah has made the flaky pastry for the crust, and then it's topped with this, wonderful custard, and there's salmon roe on top. Or there's a mini hot dog made with lapchong, and Jeff Allen has made the lapchong, and then Sarah has made this like brioche steamed bun to go with it. The fact that it's just two of them and it's this level of technical skill, it's just incredible. And it's also in an industrial area in West Oakland. It's right across from the maintenance facility for the East Bay Municipal Utility District, which like handles the water system. So you're going to like drive by and be like, am I in the right place? And you totally are. But this is one of the hardest tables to book because there's only 4 tables and there's only 2 of them.
No way. And are they doing like 1 or 2 turns a night? Do you know? Or
Yeah, I think they're doing 2.
2 turns and only 4 tables.
Yeah.
That's Sun Moon Studio. Sounds exquisite. Such a great call. And number 3 is Rich Table. You mentioned it. This is another restaurant that is a legend of San Francisco. It seems just from press that did they have like a little reboot or like a refresh? I don't know. I saw Rich Table coming up in my feed in the past couple of years, and I was wondering if there's been any changes or just people going back to it and rediscovering it.
I kind of think that they have not had a reboot.
Interesting.
And that they are just always good.
Yeah.
It is one of, again, speaking of hard tables, they're always booked. And it's one of the few places in San Francisco where I've been to where on a weeknight, people are walking in at like 9:30 trying to get a seat at the bar. This place is not under the radar. Everybody loves Rich Table, and it's for good reason. Hospitality is wonderful and so assured. The cooking is excellent. It is just an immaculate spot to have dinner.
Number 2 is Four Kings. I believe Four Kings has gotten lots of national press, and I have not made it there, and I've always wanted to go. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, Four Kings opened about a year ago. Frankie and Mike met while cooking at Mr. Jew's, which is also on this list, and is a fine dining spot with a Michelin star. And they wanted to open a place that was a little bit more casual and a little bit, more raucous and fun. And so they opened a spot in Chinatown. It's below a Kumon, and they're serving delicious Cantonese-inspired food. It's all hits. And it is such a fun, lively restaurant. The city really needed it. Chinatown really needed it. And when we counted down the top 10 at our event last night, they're so beloved by the industry. Like as soon as it became clear, we were like, and this new restaurant in Chinatown, the whole place went nuts. Like this is the spot that the industry is supporting. They're open late. They're open on Mondays. In fact, the chefs were not there at our event because they were working last night.
Wow.
But this is the spot where people want to go on their night off.
Oh my God. What's it like naming the top 10 live and having many of the chefs you've been assessing and trying their food for the past couple of years? They're like looking up at you on the stage. What's that like?
It was so remarkable. And I don't think that I was prepared for it, actually.
Yeah.
it was a room full of subscribers, but also of industry, and feeling people support their community and just the cheers and applause that would break out when like somebody's friend just won this award. It was amazing. And the energy that people brought on stage, the shock that you could see was washing across some people's faces. When there was a group photo at the end, I think it was someone from Rich Table, he was like, I can't take this photo while I'm crying. Oh. It was very moving for me personally, to see, I don't know, to see that people were being recognized and that it was meaningful to them. I mean, because I, of course, was like, I don't know, like, do they care? Do they care if I'm saying that you're like, the second best restaurant in the Bay Area? And I think people cared.
Oh, hell yeah. The top 10, they care. And like, everyone, they put so much work. I mean, everyone on this top 100 and restaurants outside of the list, just such a tough business. You grew up in it, you know how it goes. And to get some recognition, especially from the hometown newspaper, I mean, it's got to be, for some of them, it's like career defining, I would say.
I mean, what my hope was that all of the people in that room have shown me such amazing hospitality, right? Like they're on this list for a reason. They've fed me, they've welcomed me, and I just hoped that like we could throw a party for them on a Monday night, maybe their only night off. That would be fun for them, and that would, give them the respect and just a celebration of, as you said, people who are doing a really, really hard thing in a hard economic climate.
Well, at the end of your presentation, you have to name the number one restaurant. And with great ceremony, you named the number one restaurant of the year as Burdell. And I just love to get your thoughts on naming your first of many number one on the top 100.
The best restaurant in the Bay Area. It could mean so many different things, right? And so we had to take a point of view. And one thing that we decided that we wanted was we wanted people to be able to visit number one. And Caesar, who's from LA, he was like, I grew up reading Jonathan Gold's LA 101 list, and I was never able to go to the number one restaurant. It was out of reach. It was expensive. And, he just went to Providence last year for the first time. And we wanted a spot that, unlike Sun Moon Studio, you could actually book and get into as well. And Burdell checked those boxes, in addition to just being an extraordinary restaurant and one that is both beloved by people in Oakland, in the Bay Area, and that also is representing us on a national stage. And we thought that was important as well. We didn't just want it to be sort of like a restaurant that was famous around the country. I think Food and Wine just named it like, the best restaurant of the year as well. We wanted it to be playing on both of these levels, about saying something about our region and also just a place that you love to go. Every time I've been, the barbecue shrimp is so good.
Yeah, talk about the cuisine a little bit.
Yeah, it's soul food. So Chef Jeff Davis is, putting his own spin on Southern classics. The collards are amazing. He does this chicken and waffle dish, but it's served, the chicken component is like a chicken liver mousse with cracklins, and his food is just full of finesse and is plain delicious.
Wow. I mean, I'm going to guess the reservations are going to be a little tougher now with being named number one, but
they might be. But my cousin got a reservation for May this morning, so
that's good.
Yeah, still get them.
Well, MacKenzie, this is so tremendous. Congratulations to you and Caesar on your first top 100. I'm a subscriber. I'm reading what you're writing every week, and it's just terrific work. Congratulations.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate it. It's a real labor of love, and I'm so happy it's out in the world.
Liza, I wanted to share some restaurants I got to visit recently in San Francisco.
Oh, I love going to San Francisco.
I liked going to San Francisco. I really loved it after this visit. I usually went to the East Bay. Our offices were in Emeryville for 10 Speed Press, so I would go there once a year for several years. And I have really good friends in Albany, so I would always be in the East Bay. But this trip, I really wanted to go to many of the San Francisco restaurants that we've mentioned. We've had guests, and also just give it a little bit of I would call it a check, like to see what's happening in this city of great importance in America.
Okay, I'm excited to hear about where you went.
Well, I'm not going in any order. I have some coffee to talk about. I definitely have some bakeries to talk about. I have some new restaurants, some established restaurant, one that's been open since 1999. One place I really liked is called Bodega, and Bodega is run by Matthew Ho, and it's kind of an extension of his family's restaurant, Bodega Bistro, which operated from 2003 to 2017 in the Tenderloin, and he moved it down the block, so this is still in the Tenderloin, and it's modern Vietnamese, and I really think it reminds me of some of the great restaurants in New York and places that really understand bar culture and getting at the root of some traditional Vietnamese dishes. I mean, just from the bar standpoint, when you have Hitachino Nest NA, I'm like, please serve me one of those. Those are really hard to find. You have to order them on Amazon for extraordinary amounts of money. So I love when a bar does a great NA program. But I mean, the lineup, I didn't try that many dishes because I was, again, trying to hit as many places as possible. The banh canh, the rice rolls, bambeo, which is the fermented, squishy discs that are, his version were topped with uni and dried shrimp. There was a bun cha, which I thought was fantastic, which is pork belly and pork meatballs with, side of vermicelli and all the herbs and fish sauce. And so he's doing, traditional Vietnamese dishes in this like modern bar format. There's a television that was playing the Warriors game. It was I went a little early, but it seemed like it had a robust bar business, and really Matthew was just a nice guy to meet. So I like that one.
It sounds like such a fun place to get to go and also to kind of start off a night.
And the Tenderloin, a very loaded topic. Tenderloin is experienced a lot of change over the years. There's been a lot of, we've seen drug abuse on the streets of the Tenderloin, and the new mayor is attempting to, rectify that through various measures. And I'm just going to say broadly, the Tenderloin I was staying near there, and I enjoyed my time there. I think that there's definitely, like New York City, you're going to have block by block, you're going to have your moments, but I wouldn't write off the Tenderloin is what I'm saying. Yeah, which I think was surprising to me. So
yeah, that's good to know.
Yeah. So I went to some coffee places, and I'm going to kind of give a little summary. Jordan Michaelman helped curate this list, which I thought was great. The one that really struck me was Neighbor's Corner in Eureka Valley. I think Jordan described it as up in the clouds, it's one of those neighborhoods that's like really elevated, those classic San Francisco neighborhoods. It's a Japanese-style cafe, and they're doing amazing. I just loved. I had tried 2 drinks there. They're doing matcha latte and hojicha lattes. I tried an Okinawan latte with kokokuto, which is a black sugar from Okinawa. Really nice barista service there, and great wall of coffees. That's called Neighbor's Corner. I went to the legendary coffee movement in Chinatown. Just had a nice cup of coffee and hung out outside. They have tables outside with the newspaper, and it's like been a neighborhood hub for over a decade. They're doing really great pour-overs and drip coffees, and of course, you can buy a bunch of coffees there. And then the last one I mentioned on the 3 things earlier, but I want to mention it briefly again, High Energy Coffee on Clement Street in the Richmond. It's a pop-up that's done every weekend at High Trees and Wine Bar, and I just thought the Café de Ola was amazing, and just the vibe. They had great vinyls there, if you may recall.
Yeah, I feel like San Francisco is such a coffee city. It's something that's really known for, but I haven't been to any of these spots, so I love the recommendations.
Yeah, thanks, Liza. And I just think coffee there, it's like really the heart of coffee in America by many accounts, and coffee culture really, some would say Portland.
Yeah, I'm going to say the Pacific Northwest is going to come for you.
No, I mean, I'm not going to make judgments, but with a lot of the big brands coming out of San Francisco, but also some small cafes, it's really an important city for coffee. All right, moving on. I got to hang out with my friend Sarah Deserin from the San Francisco Standard. You should check out that publication. It's a relatively new digital-only publication that's doing great food writing, and Sarah's leading the charge there. El Mil Amores, which is a place that she has suggested in the Mission. It's a Mexican-American breakfast and lunch plates counter. It's open from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. really packed. I waited in line for a long time to go there, which I typically don't love, but it was worth it. I thought it was a really nice vibe. Lots of families. I saw some suitcases, people hitting there before the airport. I love that vibe. The list of dishes, huevos ranchero, chicken mole, chilaquiles. They do a Mexico City chilaquiles plate with scrambled eggs, potatoes, and a concha French toast, which I fucking loved. It was really good. And I just think that the Mission is a neighborhood that I've been going to for years, and there's always interesting food popping up in that neighborhood, and it was nice to visit with Sarah there. So
Okay, concha French toast.
Yeah.
I'm going to be thinking about for a long time.
really, really, really good, and I love the staff there. They were so nice, and I got to hang out with MacKenzie Chung Fegan, who is the restaurant critic at the San Francisco Chronicle, and I got the full lay of the land. And it's alive. San Francisco is really alive right now. I'm going to move on. So this is one of the established restaurants I went to. I got to go to Kefico. Do you know about Kefico at all?
Yes. I haven't been there, but I feel like maybe MacKenzie reviewed it recently, and that's what I was reading about.
Perhaps. I think maybe she has reviewed it in her tenure there. The Kefico, is from the chef David Nayfield, and I'd never been. I think it was really, really on the best new restaurant list when it launched about a decade ago, and really has really settled in as a favorite. I would say they're doing Italian cooking that has a heart in Rome. There's a lot of dishes that tap into the Jewish diaspora of Rome and the history of Jewish food in Rome. And I got to really try a number of dishes. But what I like about this place is bread is really at the focus. Pizza and bread and the way that they run that program is exceptional. And they do all dry aging there. They're on their own, which I think is harder than it looks. And when you have a major dry aging counter and charcuterie as well within the space, and you're doing it there, that's very challenging. And they do an amazing job. A couple of dishes that were highlights. I had a white pie with nettle mozzarella and Castelvetrano olive. There was a list of 4 or 5 pies, and this was the daily pie that day, and I really enjoyed it. Focaccia, of course, is mentioned. They do it all in-house. It's really great. And I think that what I like about David's point of view is that it's a very fun restaurant with a really excellent wine program, and it's very busy, in a Balthazar sense. It's really it's a place to be, and it's not quiet by any means, and I really loved it. And David has a cookbook coming out from Knopf, I believe, and we're going to have David on the show when that is released soon. So we'll get to talk about David, about his career and running restaurants in San Francisco. It was terrific.
I want to go to all of these places. I think when I go to San Francisco, I go see my family. Maybe I go to In-N-Out. I do a couple things, but doing the full proper San Francisco restaurant is such an experience.
I know, and I hadn't done it in a long time. Do you have a favorite from your memory San Francisco restaurant that's not In-N-Out?
I mean, obviously not In-N-Out. That's a good question. I mean, classic, Mission burritos, always something that I do. I do going to Tartine, the manufactory that has the Heath newsstand next door.
Yeah.
I think if I'm leaving the airport, that's kind of a good spot to go to get some lunch and just kind of feel this is where I'm situated. What's that? By-Right Market? Do you know that one?
Oh, the ice cream there? Oh,
yeah,
my
I like
goodness.
the ice cream there a lot.
Wow.
Also, not exactly in San Francisco proper, but in San Rafael, there's a place called Soul Food. Have you been there before?
I haven't. Tell me about it.
Okay, so I love this name because it could be Korean food or it could be Southern American soul food, but it's SOL as in the sun. It's a Puerto Rican restaurant.
Oh, cool.
They do really good chicken, rice and beans plates, plantains, that kind of vibe. And when I was growing up, whenever I'd be driving in that area with my family to visit my mom's side of the family, we would always go to Soul Food. It's kind of a locals destination. So whenever I think about the Bay, that's something that comes to mind.
I like that, Rack. And that's in San Rafael?
Yeah, it's in San Rafael.
I got to go to the Outer Sunset, too, and as an aside, Outerlands, what a great restaurant. And I just love that neighborhood. I just think I caught it on a foggy night, which is probably most nights. And wow, it's really cool craft beer bars lining the streets. And, it's right by the Richmond, and it's just a great spot to spend an afternoon walking around. You head to the beach, too. You can walk to the beach.
I love a foggy night on the beach. That's so San Francisco.
So SF. I'm going to continue. I'm going to stay in the Richmond. I'd never been to Aziza. And I've interviewed Murad Lalou, who's the chef there. I interviewed him maybe maybe 10, 12 years ago. This was a restaurant pioneering in the Richmond, opened in 1999. And Murad's has written cookbooks and had opened multiple restaurants. But this was like really the established Richmond restaurant. It was closed for, I think, 2 to 3 years around the pandemic for a full remodel. So I got to see the new space, which has been open a couple of years. I got tipped off that brunch there is the way to go, or one of the highlights, and I had a really nice brunch there. Murad is cooking his style of Moroccan cuisine. That's his heritage, but he's doing it in a very San Francisco way. And of course, knowing that it's San Francisco, there was a pancake. There was a fermented pancake, and this was a fucking good pancake. I mean, it was airy, made with semolina with honey butter, citrus honey, and bee pollen on top. And just looking at it was a great photo. It was just a beautiful pancake. And I don't think I've talked about pancakes that long on the show. So it really shows you how much I like this one. But I just think Aziza is a place I like to go back for dinner. I like to hear about Murad's story. He's just a legend in San Francisco, and it was nice that I could stop by.
On the West Coast, brunch and lunch are very popular meals of the day. I think people don't necessarily stay out as late on the West Coast as they do here in New York. And I think that a lot of people like to have a big meal before they, go hiking or go to the beach or do whatever those things are that people do when they're on the West Coast. But I'm not surprised to hear that you had a good brunch there.
It's a good point. I think, San Francisco and the West Coast are maybe earlier risers.
Yes.
That's my experience. Also, brunch in New York, it's just polarizing. Some people love it, but it can be not fun.
Yeah. No, I think that it's more of a West Coast move for me.
Yeah, they have all that sunshine too. You're out in the sun.
Yeah, you might as well. Well, okay, where else did you go that you want to shout out?
My last couple stops, I got to go to 2 bakeries, and I there's many bakeries, obviously, understatement of the century in San Francisco, but I picked 2 places that have gotten a lot of press, and I wanted to do little stop-bys there. And the first one is Bread Belly in the Richmond. Have you heard of this place?
Yes, I have been before. It's very good.
Yeah, cool. So I want to hear about your thoughts. I was quite full, so I ordered some things to go. I did not have this, but I was checking the gram yesterday. Their sandwiches, that's kind of their sneaky superpower there, is these sandwiches. They did a spiced braised corned beef with Sichuan shredded potato, green pepper, white cheddar, and an herby horseradish remoulade on milk bread. They're doing the cross-section photo holding it thing.
It looks good.
It's good for the gram, but it looks incredibly well thought through, that sandwich. Their twice-baked croissants are legendary. They do them with Santa Rosa plum and sometimes with local grapes. And I just thought that their pastry counter, I really thought their pastry case was exceptional. I hit it around 1 p.m., so it was a little cleared out. But what a volume bake shop! I mean, if you look back into the reaches of the restaurant, or if you look back into the bakery, you can see a staff of a dozen people working. It's funny, I posted something on Threads and someone was like, that place isn't good. I'm like, okay, well, you're wrong. The place is very good. So, I mean, when you get when you have long lines at a bakery, it can be polarizing. I had a great experience there. What was yours?
Yeah, I had a twice-baked croissant there, which I think is kind of what they're known for. And totally. I really liked it. I think that is kind of a style of pastry that we don't really see as much here in New York. But I really enjoyed it. And I think it's cool when you go to a place and they have something that everyone is really excited about to get there.
I liked it a lot. I want to go back. The other bakery was Maison Nico, which I didn't know much about it. I got there very early, 15 minutes before they opened. There was probably a line of 50 people by the time they opened. They moved it pretty quickly, but I was luckily there early. It's an interesting idea. It's not a bakery and only a bakery. It's a bakery and a Lyonnaise charcuterie shop. And they're doing these really, really classic French charcuterie and baked items. They have a pâté en croûte with duck, chicken, dried cherry, golden raisins, pistachio. What a beautiful thing. I did not get that. I'm not the biggest pâté en croûte fan. It was maybe 9:45 a.m., so I wasn't quite vibing it. They are legendary for their cannelés, which I think they're either good or they're bad, and these ones were quite good. Pain au chocolat was quite good. They do quiche, and then they have a variety of choux of the day. And really, really cool vibe inside. And I thought Maison Nico was doing excellent stuff.
I'm looking on their Instagram right now, and the detail in these pastries is crazy.
Yeah, it's It's exceptional. And the laminated dough, the patisserie there is beautiful work. Just for the photos, but I took a few things back to my hotel. Speaking of that, the Timbri Hotel in San Francisco on Market Street, I really liked his brand new, the rooftop bar, a good coffee bar, and right in that neighborhood I mentioned on Market Street, that puts you in a really central location. So I dug that. Yeah, it was a great trip. I was really happy that I could visit San Francisco. We've traveled in California with the crew here. We were in Southern California, and I really hope that we can go to Northern California outside of San Francisco and visit all of the great towns north of San Francisco and east of San Francisco and, into the Silicon Valley. There's so much great food there.
Yeah, I'm so glad that California treated you well.
Thank you for letting me share.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Matt.
This is Taste is hosted and produced by Eliza Barbanel and me, Matt Rodbard. The show is edited by lead producer Clayton Gumbert and supervised by Pat Stango, Director of Media Production and Development at Penguin Random House. Thanks to Shalia Harris and the production team at Penguin Random House. Theme music by Steve Rydell. Logo and guest illustrations by Ellie Skurzat. Visit Taste online at tastecooking.com and make sure to subscribe to our newsletter to keep updated on all cool things in the world of taste.